Hello. Oh, yeah, that is reverberating. One moment. I could have worn more clippy-cloppy shoes, but I didn't have any. Welcome. Welcome everyone to the Zero Waste Tiny Talks. My name's Sophie Ward. I work for Wastebusters, and welcome to everyone. Just want to firstly say just a massive thanks to the WOW team for all their hard work this week. I know what it takes to put on something like this, and for me personally, I've had a lot of inspiration this week, and I hope you've all been able to head along to a few things, and there's still more to come. It's all going till Sunday. So just before we kick off, just a few simple housekeeping details. So please, if everyone can have their phones on silent or switched off if you like. The toilets are just outside of the foyer on the right-hand side, so if you need to do that, that's where it is. In the event of a fire, just follow the exit signs outside, and the assembly area is round the back on the grassy area near Francesca's. In the event of an earthquake, stop, drop, and hold. Okay, so tonight is all about the circular economy. And we've got a fantastic group of speakers lined up to keep you entertained and provide some inspiration and some great stories of some really awesome things happening here in Aotearoa. But I thought I'd just do a quick intro of what the circular economy is. If you were here for the last session, you've probably already got a pretty good background. But the circular economy is an alternative to this very, very broken linear economy. And in the broken linear economy, we take, we extract, we use, and then we dispose. In this model, we throw things out when we no longer want them. And we all know that we're reaching the limits of the take, make, use, dispose model. The system's no longer working for people, and it's certainly not working for the planet. The depletion of our natural resources, plastic in the oceans, the overwhelming amount of textile waste, and the proliferation of single-use plastics are just a few of the harms that we're all dealing with. But in a circular economy, waste and pollution are designed out of the system. Resources are kept in use for as long as possible, and we extract the absolute maximum value we can from them while we use them. And then we recover and regenerate products and materials at the end of their useful life. It's kind of like reduce, reuse, recycle, but on steroids. Okay, let's kick off. So as I said, we've got some amazing speakers. And I'm just going to invite to the stage my colleagues. It's real hard because the lights are kind of in your eyes here, but I'm going to invite Celine van der Eken, my colleague from Wastebusters, to the stage to kick off the first talk.
We are prepared. Hello, we are here today to tell you a little bit more about reaction and what that means and what Wastebusters has to do with it. Reaction is a global social enterprise in the French Alps with the purpose of keeping outdoor gear out of landfill. Reaction consists of a collective of members that are driven by this purpose, and they want to keep outdoor gear affordable and approachable. This collective shares best practices on rescuing garments, on reviving garments through repair and repurpose, and best practices on redistributing garments through rentals, donations, resale, etc. They encourage outdoor organizations to implement a more circular model in their businesses. Wastebusters was the first in Aotearoa to team up with Reaction, and this is how it all went down. Real Journeys rebranded to Real NZ, which left them with a substantial amount of branded uniforms and quality outdoor gear from Cardrona and Travelcone. All of this was potentially risking ending up in landfill, which is not what they wanted. The idea of repurposing all these garments came up at one of Wastebusters' repair events, where Ewan Mackey, the sustainability lead from Real NZ, and Gina Dempster from Wastebusters started talking. Ewan Mackey used to run a ski shop back in the French Alps with the founder of Reaction. And that relationship, together with Gina's knowledge, sprouted the idea of rebranding all the Real Journeys garments to Reaction. Wastebusters contacted Reaction, and the rest is history.
We got pretty excited at this stage at Wasties because we saw this as a really amazing opportunity to have a positive impact in the area of branded company uniforms. So we got in touch with QLDC and we asked them whether or not they'd think about funding it through their Waste Minimisation Fund. And they encouraged us to apply, and we were successful in securing some money to fund this pilot. And we knew that it was a problem. So according to you'll be a mate, this is crazy. According to the British Fashion Council, there are enough clothes on the planet to clothe the next 6 generations. We don't need to buy any more clothes. In Aotearoa, we landfill 220,000 tonnes of textile waste each year, and there's very few industrial solutions in New Zealand to deal with textile waste. At Wastebusters, we see firsthand the impact of textile waste every day. Our reuse shop handles massive amounts of clothing and shoes every day. And even with the amazing support of our incredible community of second-hand shoppers, we are donated far more clothing than we can find homes for. And company-branded uniforms present this really unique problem because many companies are reluctant to donate them because they don't necessarily want people out there representing them in their branded uniform. And when companies rebrand, they don't necessarily want people out there in their old brand because they have a new brand. And also, op shops find it pretty difficult to sell these kind of garments because they're not really that desirable. People don't necessarily want to wear a garment that's got a company logo on it. And so often, these clothes will go to landfill. But at Wasties, we love a good challenge. And we saw this project as a way to do 3 things. The first thing was to raise awareness about this issue, excuse me, of branded company uniforms. And it was also to make the garment more desirable through this rebranding process. And to see if we could create a viable business model by rebranding and selling company uniforms where either the brand or the style has been updated. All the while, keeping branded uniforms out of landfill. So Real NZ donated us 200 pre-loved and new garments from their stock, from Treble Cone, from Cadrona and Film Real NZ, for us to rebrand and sell through Wastebusters, through Real NZ outlets and also online. And we had some really amazing brands. What have you got there? Is that the Mons one? Mons, Kathmandu, Arc'teryx, Carbon, Marmot. There was a lot of production and design stumbling blocks along the way, and we realised pretty early on that we really were going to need some help, particularly in the area of clothing design and also sewing. We're super grateful. You can see here Natalie Norman from the Mons Royale production team who came up with this concept of the cover-up. So as you can, we've got a bunch of garments up here. Celine's going to grab one. So as you can see, the Treble Cone logo is hidden inside, and the cover-up is really integrated into the garment. And so when you look at it, you wouldn't know that it had been rebranded, and then the Reaction logo just kind of sits on the side here. All of the fabric we used for the cover-up was from either garments that were destined for landfill or from dead stock or offcuts from New Zealand clothing manufacturers. So through the pilot, we've rebranded 200 garments. We've tested multiple sales channels and multiple ways of sewing and attaching the patches. We've sold them at the Wasties ski shop. We've had pop-up events up the mountain in Cadrona and online via the Wastebusters website, which you should check out. It definitely hasn't been straightforward. We've invested hundreds of hours in this project, and it's been really fun, but there've definitely been some challenges, and we're yet to really know if it's a viable business model. But in the meantime, we're super proud to be advocating for a really innovative solution to keep branded company uniforms in circulation.
So what's next? What we want to do is challenge the norm of what's being done now, because it's clearly not working. We believe that together we can bring the amount of clothing that is going into landfill, we can bring those numbers down, and collectively we can encourage all parties involved to make better choices when it comes to branding uniforms or rebranding. How do we want to challenge this norm? We want people and organizations to think about 4 things before they brand or rebrand a uniform. The first thing we want them to think about is secondhand. Does your uniform need to be brand new? Can it be secondhand? Can you team up with Wasties to do so? Maybe we can give you a hand. The second thing we want them to think about is the reuse and resell opportunities. The life of a garment doesn't end when it's not being worn by your crew or your company co-workers anymore. You got to think about what happens after it's not being worn anymore. The third thing is, do you really need it branded? Can you work with something else, maybe a temporary stamp, maybe a little Velcro? Just think about other solutions for branding. And then the fourth thing we want you to think about is the garment itself. The fabric, for example, is it sustainable? Think about the quality. How long can it be worn for? Think about the color and the design. Keep it timeless so that it doesn't go out of fashion. And then when it comes down to big events, we see that events love to date their uniforms or their crew shirts, but is that really necessary? Because if you don't date it, the crew can give it back at the end of your event and you can just keep using it over and over again. Basically, what we want to do is get the party started on circular economy by keeping as many garments out of landfill and just keeping them in circulation. And you can get your party started by getting one of these garments after this talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up, Kirsty.
Which is the button on the clicker? It's just the green one. Okay, great. Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Kirsty Taylor. I'm a volunteer at Fabricate. So Fabricate is part of the Wanaka Community Workshop here in Wanaka. It's a community sewing space where members can sew, repair, construct and learn. It's a place to learn skills from local members to deepen the community's ability to self-sustain in areas such as clothing and soft furnishings. We're focused on using materials from the landfill stream and reducing waste through reuse, repair and repurposing. So Fabricate was set up by these 2 lovely ladies here, Sue James and Claire O'Connell. We have loads of volunteers and we're very conveniently located right beside the Wanaka Community Workshop, which is a woodworking community space. So the guys there helped us set up the space and built a large cutting table, and that's actually made from some repurposed shelving at Mitre 10, so keeping with the theme. We have great people donating all sorts of things from all over the Upper Clutha region. People drive in with their cars, and that was a wedding dress designer who dropped off a whole lot of old fabric, or fabric she didn't need anymore. We get threads, all sorts of wonderful resources donated, which we sort of stock up at Fabricate, and then members can use them in their own projects or in workshops and classes. Here's a lady who came in to do a workshop to make toy bags out of old curtains. So Sue and Claire run a lot of classes, evening classes in construction and pattern drafting and mending, to teach the community, to keep their clothes moving, keep them out of landfill. We're part of the repair revolution, so we have a lot of repair days at Fabricate where people can bring in clothes that have holes or need buttons replaced, or things that need mended. So we have volunteers that are superstars on the sewing machine, and they come along and not only fix the clothes but show and help people to learn how to do that themselves. We have this fabulous machine which was made in Germany by a company called Fillermaker. It's a fabric shredder. So we feed fabric into the machine and it shreds it into these tiny little pieces. So clothes that are beyond repair or are really badly stained, that sort of thing, or offcuts from projects that would usually just go in the bin, get fed through the shredder and then can be used as a filler. So we've been making yoga bolsters out of upcycled fabric and filling them with this fill. So each yoga bolster takes about 6 kilograms of the shredded fabric. We're going to be making meditation cushions and things like that as well. And we'd love to hear any other ideas that people have that we could use this shredded fabric for. We do lots of collaboration with the Wanaka Community Workshops, really convenient being next door. So one project we did was we took a whole lot of old marketing flags that were destined for landfill. We cut them up and sewed them into cornhole bags. Then the Wanaka Community Workshop constructed the wooden part of the game, and we sold these for really competitive price at Christmas last year. And we had loads of orders for people buying them for Christmas presents. So it's great to be next door to the Wanaka Community Workshop. There's lots of things we can do together. Another ongoing project we have with Wastebusters. Wastebusters have a huge amount of towels that are not really, they're sort of past their use-by date for using in homes. So we take them, cut them up, overlock the edges and then sell them as bundles of rags, $3 a pack at Wastebusters, and these do really well. So that's an ongoing project that we have. It's also a great way for people to learn how to use the overlocker if they've never done that before. Another great collaboration we did with Wastebusters. In July, the government banned single-use plastic produce bags. So to coincide with that date, we ran some workshops. People came along and made hundreds of reusable produce bags out of old curtain samples. And we taught people how to make them, and between us and Queenstown, we made hundreds of bags, which were then given out for free at New World 3 parks by these wonderful Wastebusters crew. So that was a really cool thing to be involved in. Wastebusters often has a sustainable Christmas market that's coming up in a couple of weeks. So last year we did a stall with the Wanaka Community Workshop, and we made things such as these fabric salad bowl wraps, which are based on the Japanese furoshiki wrapping. So those were made out of fabric that was donated by Wastebusters, and they were sold with these beautiful wooden salad servers made by the guys at the Wanaka Community Workshop. And we're hoping to do a project with Revology later in the year doing furoshiki for Christmas wrapping. So look out for that. Another great project with Wastebusters, we did a refashion show in March. So we erected a big tent on the car park outside the Wanaka Community Workshop, and we put on this great fashion show. This was a great event. It celebrated second-hand clothing and ideas like buy well, alter and mend, so cherish your clothing. We had all sorts of models and young children who had made their own clothing, got up and modelled that. So it was a fabulous event with a lot of potential to upscale and promote the use of pre-loved clothing and really celebrate slow fashion. We also work with the Mint Charitable Trust, who support those in the Upper Clutha with intellectual disabilities to have a voice and be included. So here I ran a workshop with Mint. We made decorations for the Festival of Colour from discarded circus tent fabric. Made a whole lot of bunting that was used around town and that can be reused time and time again. It was made to last. Another really exciting project, we were commissioned by Wanaka to make a grebe and a tui costume for the Wanaka show this year. So we had lots of great volunteers, and we used all sorts of upcycled materials. It was 100% upcycled and reused materials, such as an old bike helmet and even a baby's sleeping basket to make these tui and grebe costumes, which you can see here. So, and they were also made to last. So we've already had somebody approach Wanaka to borrow the tui costume for another event. So yeah, that was a great reuse project. Another great thing we've sort of discovered is through our Facebook community, people will donate things to us and we then find new homes for them. So the Crystal Palace at the Festival of Colour had a whole lot of these giant, incredible velvet curtains that they no longer needed. They were sort of, starting to wear a little bit. So we had a big pile of them. We kept them at Fabricate. We found some people to come and pick them up for weddings and school plays and things like that. So we find we're quite a good place for people to sort of move on fabric-related items and find them a new home instead of going to landfill. Fabricate is for people of all ages and backgrounds, keen to embrace mending, repairing, upcycling and preserving vital skills for our community. A big thank you to all the volunteers at Fabricate and the Wanaka Community Workshop, as well as all the staff at Wastebusters and also QLDC for providing us with funding. If you're interested in being a member of Fabricate or the Wanaka Community Workshop, it's $50 per annum for an individual membership or $75 for a family. And we're always on the lookout for facilitators and people to come and lend a hand and pass on their skills. So that's it. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Gary Haw. I'm the local branch manager for Kiwi Harvest. We're a food rescue charity, so we'll move from clothes to food. And our model is to reduce as much food as possible, excess food still edible, go into landfill and redivert that to other local charities that are helping people who are struggling for many reasons with food insecurity. So it's one solution to two problems. That's the beauty of it. Just one simple model has big effect on two problems in the community. We visit supermarkets, cafes, orchards, growers every day, Monday to Friday, and then supply different charities Monday to Friday. So it's a very effective model. In terms of the issue, food waste, huge issue, and I always just feel it's the most unnecessary issue in terms of what ends up in landfill. And actually, surprisingly, households are the worst offenders, and it's 15% of all household food is uneaten and ends up in landfill. That's costing you about $1,500 a year. And all the food we produce in New Zealand, 30% of it goes straight to landfill without anyone ever touching it. So it's a huge waste of resources in terms of how much water, energy, time is needed to produce that nutritious food, and then to see it go straight to landfill is pretty crazy. With the food from households alone, you could feed Dunedin population for 3 years just on that excess food from 1 year. So yeah, it's a big problem. And when it goes to landfill, people think, oh, food isn't that bad, but it actually is worse if you were it would be better if you just left it on the sidewalk, because when it goes to modern landfills, it doesn't have the oxygen it needs to break down. So instead of creating carbon, it creates methane, which is 25 times worse than carbon for the atmosphere. And then food insecurity, the other issue we tackle. Food insecurity in New Zealand, it's not, thankfully, an issue where people have no food to eat. It's an issue that we don't have enough food and the right type of food. And that's affecting 1 in 4 people in New Zealand right now. And there's kind of tiered layers of it. There's the people that can't eat full stop, which is thankfully very low, but there's a huge portion that they can't eat nutritious food. And that has huge knock-on effects in terms of education, health, especially with kids. And then there's a huge proportion, even locally, where it's issues in terms of when an event happens or an accident happens and the savings are gone and they go for a short period without being able to eat. And that's a big number that people don't talk about enough. So Kiwi Harvest locally, it's a very small team. So it's myself, Carmel you see here, who's part-time, and then a handful of regular volunteers, amazing volunteers that give up their time every second week to do 1 shift. But with that team, it's incredible what we're able to achieve. So last year we had a record collection of rescued food here locally of 131,000 kilos of food, which translates into, if you were to look at it from offsetting carbon, that's like growing a 20,000 mature tree forest every year. So you can imagine the resources needed to do that, to offset the carbon. That's what we're able to do with our small team, just from stopping that excess very good food going to landfill. And then on the other side of things, that food equates to over 350,000 meals that we're able to redivert to 12 charities across Queenstown, Wanaka and Cromwell that are helping people. And right now it's record levels. We're hitting almost 800 people every week that are requiring food support in our community. Just a brief bit on the 3 charities we support in Wanaka here. So Food for Love, an amazing group of women, an army of women, who cook homemade, nutritious hampers, a week-long hamper of food. And it's on a nominations-based basis where you go on their website and anyone you know who's struggling for any reason, they may have been in an accident, they may have had a death in the family, they may have lost their job, they may be struggling financially, you can nominate them and the food turns up anonymously on their doorstep. And it's just a great way of the community reaching out. Many people who live here don't have the normal family support network behind them. And so, like in all our lives, things happen. And when these types of organizations are able to step in where a family maybe would, it just gets them through that tough period. We have the Community Network's food bank down at the community hub, like a mini supermarket. Great work they do. Again, this winter has been record numbers. They've been trying to support because of the cost of livings, record rent increases, record mortgage increases, and people just being pushed beyond their limits. And this is a service for them where they're able to get free food. They turn up and Yvonne and them give them a list of all the food that we've supplied, and then they create a shopping hamper for them based on that, free of charge. And then the Kahu Youth Trust, we support all the youth trusts across Queenstown, Wanaka and Cromwell. These services are brilliant because they identify and offer a safe space to kids. So no matter what's going on at home, they're able to use this service and they're able to identify kids that maybe not getting the nutrition they need at home, offer them the food they need, and also talk to the families and support them with food hampers if needed. Last night, we had an amazing night. We were shortlisted for the Impact 100 grant, and we were one of the 2 lucky winners. Yeah. And as a result, our hard-working truck, Lily, we will be replacing with a younger model to do all the grunting over the Crown Range and down through the Cowra Gorge. And Lily will be coming to Wanaka full-time. So she'll be retiring over here, use it for our volunteers that are amazingly using their own vehicles twice a week to do the local collections over here. So they'll have Lily to use that now. And they'll be visiting all the local supermarkets on a Tuesday and a Friday, saving all that food going to landfill and redistributing to the 3 charities you've just seen. Another exciting project is we got funding through the QLDC Waste Minimisation Fund for our cafe collection run to start in Wanaka. That's with an e-bike and a trailer, and it'll visit all the local CBD cafes, collecting their cabinet food that otherwise would end up in landfill, and again redistributing that to the local charities to use. So a great bit of exercise and a great a bit of work in the community as well. So yeah, we'll be looking for volunteers for that as well, hopefully this summer. Now, I'd like to talk about, lots of this is obviously what we do in terms of dealing with businesses and stuff, but it's always great to kind of look at it from individual point of view. As I said, household waste is the biggest waste contributor for food waste in New Zealand. So just steps to offset that. I always say it's taking the first steps is starting to grow your own food. WOW have done an amazing food resilience project. And the main finding I took from that was 100 years ago, we produced 95% of our food locally here. Now it's 5%. So in the event of an earthquake, in the event of any serious injury, any serious issue, we have about 3 to 4 days worth of food in the community. When the supermarkets run out, if the bridges are down, airstrips are down, we're in a big problem. So it's important that as a community we take steps, just small steps. If you just have a balcony, a small garden, that you start to grow your own. Part of that report identified 3 main reasons why people don't grow their own food. 1, they're in rented accommodation. 2, they don't have the time to water the plant. And 3, they don't have the knowledge. We've just lost it through the generations. Taking that into account, we launched this winter our Kiwi Home Harvest campaign. And this is where we're looking to create planter boxes using completely upcycled materials, pallets, the eco-store drums you see in the supermarkets. And this will provide a source of food that will fit in the backs of people's car, that they'll be self-watering using reservoirs in the bottom of the eco-store drums, and they'll come with everything needed to start growing your own food, seedlings, cookbooks, maintenance manuals from Dr. Compost. So it'll be a complete package and you can help build them yourselves. So we'll be launching that over the summer, so keep an eye out on that one. Michael Sly, we'll be hearing from later. He's supplying all the compost needed for these planter boxes, and that is a great full circle of the food source, because some of that food he's using for that has come from the charities we've supplied, from the cuttings they have left over after creating the meals, and that's gone back into making this compost, which will go back into growing food locally. So. Now, one tip I always say is buy ugly, okay? Every day, right now, I'm going to supermarkets and I'm filling my truck with bananas. Bananas that have come from Ecuador, traveled across the ocean, and never seen the supermarket shelf because they have a couple of black spots on them and people won't buy them. So please, please, please buy that ugly fruit with that bit of blemish on it. It's still as nutritious, and then the supermarkets will change their ways, and we won't see all this food ending up in landfill before it's even touched. Another one I'd say is storing food. For example, keep bananas. They need to be loners. Don't put them anywhere else around food. They will make them go off a lot quicker. Bread. Our climate, we need to freeze it straight away, especially in summer now. When you buy your bread, put it in the freezer, not in the bread bin, and then bring it out as you need it. Same with onions and potatoes. They're not good friends. Keep them separately, or else they ripen quicker when they're together. Use bys and best before guidelines. There was a picture there. It's disappeared. I would recommend there is a document online you can search called the AFRA guidelines. They are the food rescue guidelines that we use, and you can just Google AFRA guidelines. And there's a document, a one-page document you can print out, stick it on your fridge. It has all the best before guidelines on how long you can use the food after the best before date. Use by dates, please stick to them. Best before dates are just a guideline. With things like yogurt, we take them 2 weeks after their best before date to redistribute them. Milk, 3 days, canned goods, a year. So everything has longer than it says. So please utilize that resource, put it somewhere prominent in the house, and that's a good guideline then for using it. For any excess food, you can obviously donate it rather than putting it in the landfill. You can donate it through Kiwi Harvest, but you can also go directly to the charities you have here, especially the community network, at the community hub. The food bank are always accepting food, and it's a very convenient model there. Volunteers, our charity, all the charities we support are all run mainly by volunteers. So if you have time, please reach out. We're all crying out for volunteers to keep the system running, to try and build on what we're doing already and stop more food going to landfill and helping people that need it most. So yeah, thank you very much for your time, and yeah, I'll pass on to the next talker.
Have you ever popped to the supermarket to buy one item and then re-emerged half an hour later with your arms overflowing with products and wondering how you just spent $142? I have to apologise, but I may have had a small amount to do with that. So I spent the first 15 years of my career working in the fast-moving consumer goods industry, otherwise known as FMCG. It's the industry that puts products on our supermarket shelves. Think tubes of toothpaste, bottles of wine, packets of chips. So my job in that industry was all about understanding how we behave as shoppers in the supermarket, and then using those insights to orchestrate things to get us all to buy and consume more. There's an army of people like the former me around the world whose job it is to understand our behaviour and then curate retail environments to influence our purchase decisions. When I started on my own personal journey towards sustainability and reducing waste, I started to seriously question my career choice. But then I sort of became fascinated with, well, how can I use all the knowledge and experience that I have as a force for good? So I used to be about understanding shopper behaviour to get people to buy more. Now I'm about understanding human behaviour to get people to consume less. It's a weirdly similar approach, but just with what I consider to be a better outcome. So how can we use insights from something like the supermarket shopping environment to help inspire us and those around us to be more sustainable or to reduce our waste? So insight number one is you always want your products at hip to eye level. As humans, we are wired for the path of least resistance. We go for the easy option. When it comes to supermarket shelves, that means we shop for the products that are right in front of us. And when it comes to reducing our waste, for example, it's no different. It has to be easy. It has to be right in front of us. So when I wanted my household to start composting more, it didn't work when I hid the compost bin underneath the kitchen sink. I had to put it right in plain sight, right in front of us, make it easy to spot, make it easy to use. When I worked with an organisation who wanted to get more of their employees using reusable coffee cups, we put a table of the reusable coffee cups right by the front door so that when people went out to get their coffee, they were right there. They were right in plain sight. We even partnered with the local cafe and gave them a stash of the company's reusable coffee cups so that when their team went in to get their coffee, again, it was right there in front of them. The easiest thing was to grab it and use it. I spend a lot of my life motivational speaking around sustainability for organisations. The most effective speaking gigs I do are at company conferences, when I'm put in front of a room full of people, probably people that have never even thought about sustainability or waste reduction, but I'm put right in their line of sight. The easiest thing for them to do is to listen to me, and it's the best shot I have of opening minds for people who it probably wasn't even on their radar before. Insight number two, we shop with our eyes. The amount of time, energy, resource and money that goes into designing products and packaging in industries like FMCG would blow your mind. We are visually drawn to things, and when it comes to the colour or shape of design of a product, that's what can make or break its success on a supermarket shelf. And when we think about things like waste reduction and sustainability, whether we're marketing an event or we're creating educational content or we're implementing an initiative, the look, feel and design also makes a really big difference. This is a community initiative that I'm involved with in my community in the Waikato, and it's a series of edible food gardens placed on suburban berms. In the middle of that garden is an in-ground worm farm. One of the key objectives of this project is to reduce food waste, but what actually draws people in is the beauty and connection of food growing. So the aesthetics and the design of this project is what creates the engagement. Insight number 3 from the supermarket: sell convenience. Time is one of the most precious commodities we have in our modern day lives. When you walk into a supermarket, you're surrounded by claims of heat and eat, just add water, single serve, promise after promise of convenience. When it comes to sustainability and waste reduction, there's often a perception that it's more time consuming. Instead, we try and buy our way to convenience. Ironically, one survey found that on average, females will spend 8.5 years of their lives shopping, which doesn't feel very convenient, right? Breaking up with the constant quest for more is convenient. Shopping less is convenient. And so that's why I normalise making do. That's why I normalise being resourceful. That's why I normalise things like repeat wearing your blue top that you've had for 15 years. Because you love it and you feel good in it. And not only does it reduce textile waste, but it's also really convenient because I don't have to shop for another one. Insight number 4, features and benefits. When you sell a skincare product, you don't sell it on the basis that it has 48 active ingredients in it. You sell the promise of a 48.2% reduction in the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles. You sell the promise of younger looking skin. So when I talk about my zero waste lifestyle, I sell the dream. I talk about the fact that I've saved time and I've saved money and I've simplified my life and I feel more connected and I love that my kids are growing up knowing and respecting the true value of things. My zero waste lifestyle has made my life 82.4% better. Results may vary. I honestly believe that most people inherently want to do what's right for the planet. That most of us inherently want to reduce the amount of waste we create and what we throw away. But as humans, just because we know we want to do something, it doesn't mean we do it. There's this big grey area of being human that gets in the way. And it's this big grey area of being human, that's what makes us walk out of the supermarket wondering how we've just bought all the stuff that we never planned to buy. But it's also that big grey area of being human that we can leverage as a force for good, for ourselves and for those around us. Kia ora, everybody. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and apologies, I'm going to have to use my papers tonight as I'm carrying some precious cargo, and as it turns out, the brain of a pregnant woman can't really be trusted. My name is Mariela van der Ven, and I'm the creative director of Recreate Clothing. We are an ethical and sustainable clothing brand from Aotearoa. I design everything here in Central Otago, in the fashion capital of Clyde, to be precise. Our garments are made in our own workshop in Cambodia, where we train people and provide fair employment. We are a non-for-profit, and 100% of our profits go back into our Cambodian community. We are not about ticking boxes, but we want to see real changes in the lives of people that make our garments and fabrics. Recreate was born in the hope to provide fair employment for women in the marginalized community of Detme in Cambodia. The people of Detme were originally slum dwellers who lived in the capital city of Phnom Penh. In 2007, in efforts to improve tourism in Cambodia, the government evicted many slum dwellers into rural sites, called relocation areas. One of these was Detme, meaning new land. As this relocation area was far from their former jobs and schools, the people quickly found themselves in desperate situations, with little opportunity for employment or education. Income was found through prostitution, drugs, washing of clothes and selling food. Children were kept home from school to collect rubbish, watch siblings, or in worse cases, sold for slave labor or to brothels. As the years passed, the community developed. However, opportunities for women to find rightful employment remained scarce. So, in 2013, the Recreate workshop was launched, and the first intake of our students began their journey of learning a new skill in order to transform lives. Our first student was Sampoa. She was very nervous at the beginning because she'd never really been to school, and she couldn't read or write. She'd also been homeless, living with her husband and 2 kids underneath a table in the local marketplace. She just did little bits of work wherever she could to make money, but there was no real future in any of that. So she came to us with a strong desire to learn a skill that no one could ever take away from her. A skill she could pass on to her kids, so they could have a better future. She was really nervous about not being able to learn, but she worked incredibly hard. And today, she's our team leader. She teaches our students everything that she's learned. Sampoa's husband is also part of our team. He trained in sewing machine repair, and he loves cutting all our garments and patterns. And he's really good-natured about having his wife as a boss. Over the years, we've helped them with their savings, and have helped them to secure a mortgage to buy their first home, a real home. Even though they've already lived in their home for years, still it's their big pride. Whenever we are over in Cambodia and we happen to pass by their house, they tell me with their proudest face, "This is my home," despite only speaking a word or two of English. I've seen firsthand in Cambodia people packed in the back of trucks like cattle on their way to work at the garment factories for 60 hours a week for not much more than $100 a month. One of our team members, Terry, joined our team when she was pregnant. She had just come from working in a garment factory that used such harsh chemicals that she fainted several times at work. And although desperate for the money, she left because she was worried about the health of her unborn child. She couldn't believe that she had a chance of finding a better job while heavily pregnant. But she joined our team, and we've now seen both of her babies grow into toddlers and gone off to school. In our workshop, we have hammocks set up next to our machines, so babies come to work with their mums. We've got a little childcare centre, and often grandmas come in too, to help out with the kids, while the mums try to stay focused on the sewing. Believe me, it's never a dull day in our workroom, with plenty of kids running around. We strongly believe that we can't look after one community but neglect another. We want to make sure that every single person in our supply chain is valued and cared for. We've always put the fair treatment of people at the top of our list, and that's from the farmers who grow our cotton right through every person involved in the process. That's why we only want to work with materials that have the softest footprint. One of our signature fabrics is our artisan hand-woven cotton, which is produced in Cambodia entirely by hand. The cotton is spun into thread and dyed using natural and organic materials, such as barks, vegetable skins, and flowers. The thread is then hand-woven on the loom, like you see in the picture. It will take our weavers a full day to weave 1 meter of fabric. Compare that to the fabric that rolls off the machine in the factory, hundreds of meters a day. Our hand-woven cotton provides fair employment for rural families through the use of traditional Khmer weaving techniques. We have 7 women weaving fabrics for us all year round, mostly from their homes, so they can care for their children as they live in rural areas, and traveling to and from work takes too much time away from their families. Sustainability is at the heart of all we do. When designing our garments, we begin with the end in mind. All Recreate clothing is fully circular, in the hopes that Recreate will not contribute to the huge amount of waste created in our industry. Our circularity model begins with conscious design. We only use organic and natural fabrics, and all convenience items, such as zips, have been replaced with sustainable alternatives, such as recycled cotton buttons. So garments can be fully recycled at the end of its lifetime. In our workshop in Cambodia, we minimize waste by repurposing garment samples, packaging materials, and fabric offcuts. Fabric offcuts are being used to make women's sanitary products, kids' toys, and kids' clothing, which we donate to the community. As each garment is worn, we offer our customers the opportunity to relove with our take-back scheme and extend the life of our clothing with a new home. We also offer a repair service, extending the life of our clothing with some thoughtful mending. Once a garment finally reaches the end of its life, we recycle. Through our partnership with Circular Cotton, returned garments go through a fiber-to-fiber recycling process and are then fed back into the textile production chain. The fabric is used again to make new clothing, closing the loop on the garment industry and minimizing the huge amount of waste created in our industry. Thank you.
There we go. Hi everyone, my name's Hayley. I work for Naylor Love. We are a national main contractor, so tough act to follow. We don't do anything for a not-for-profit cause. We are one of New Zealand's largest sort of contractors or builders, to keep it real simple. We are, however, changing the way we think as a business, and have recently redefined our strategy and our purpose. Our goal is to build people and ultimately create a sustainable future. And to do that, we have rethought our strategic approach, which considers our values, which I won't go into a huge amount of detail with, but basically in recent years, we've put a lot of time and effort into health and safety and social sustainability. We all know the building industry makes a lot of money, and I won't try and dispute that. So the economic sustainabilities, we've got that pretty much well covered. But in recent months and years, we've refocused our attention on our people. We have 900 staff across the country, and our staff turnover is probably one of the lowest in the industry by a good few %, which is pretty good. But in recent months, we've refocused our attention on environmental sustainability. And I suppose the point of today is to talk about waste minimization mostly. There's obviously only a certain amount of things that we can do in this industry as main contractors. I'm not sure if any of you are fully aware of the impact the construction industry has in this region, but in Queenstown Lakes, Queenstown Wanaka predominantly, the construction and demolition industry results in 32% of our regional waste going into landfill, which is pretty significant. So what we're trying to do as a business is to reduce that as best possible, and there are some really crucial things that I'll talk about today that we can do. The first thing that we've done recently is readdress our policy. So our senior managers are both pushing down to us at the coalface, and we're also pushing back up to them to improve our corporate social responsibility as a business as well. We've done heaps of cool stuff. We're New Zealand's only construction company that's environmentally accredited to ISO 14001, which means we're constantly improving our environmental processes, waste management, carbon footprint, and so forth. We signed up to the Climate Leaders Coalition, and we're reducing our carbon footprint annually. Since we started recording 3 years ago, we're down to 32% reduction in our carbon emissions, which is pretty good for a construction company. We also focus a lot of attention on being a member of the New Zealand Green Building Council, which works alongside designers, engineers, architects, to create sustainable building solutions. And obviously, if anyone's aware of Green Star, that's a really cool innovative tool for making buildings, I guess, greener from a whole of life perspective, especially in the commercial sector, more so than residential. Here's a few stats about our carbon emissions, which I won't go into a huge amount, but we are monitoring it, and our target is to be carbon net zero by 2050, and we are on track to achieve that. We're actually exceeding expectations at the moment, which is awesome. We're swapping our vehicles out to hybrid and EV. And what we like to try and encourage our clients with predominantly, if anyone's in the building industry, it's really, really hard to have an impact as a contractor. We're at the end of the cycle. We're the last people that people think about, and there is a lot of onus put on us as builders to try and ultimately not send things to landfill, which is really tough because ultimately we're not responsible for design. We can only deal with what's left at the end of the cycle. One of the things we're offering to our clients is a crafty little carbon calculator, which will try and encourage people to swap out their steel and concrete buildings for mass timber. You can see from the stats here that the timber example has a massive amount less upfront carbon than the typical steel and concrete equivalents. We're also offering really simple, innovative tools like rainwater harvesting. We can do solar calculations on our site welfare and accommodation facilities, and for those wanting to spend a little bit more money up front. We can also make sure that the charging of tools and powering of lights and all those sorts of things can be eco-friendly as well and low energy. We like to think that we're mass timber experts, so if you want a beautiful timber building made out of LVL or CLT, if anybody's au fait with the terminology, we recently completed the Nelson Airport project, which was pretty revolutionary in New Zealand. Unfortunately, most of the timber is imported from Europe, which is still not ideal, but it apparently is less carbon than the steel and concrete equivalents here, even though it's shipped halfway around the world. If that doesn't float your boat, this is a recent project that my colleagues up in Christchurch completed called Mahana House. It's for Habitat for Humanity. So we paired up with the guys over there. They wanted to create a social housing scheme. They didn't want to go down the government route. We offered design and build services to basically offer low maintenance, healthy, affordable homes. We offered a full turnkey service, which was consultation, design, and then obviously execution as far as building these homes. We built a bunch and we're building even more in Christchurch now. The idea is to sort of replicate the Kayanga Ora kind of theme, but through a private social housing endeavour. But they're really cool and yeah, super affordable. We don't like to pick holes in what other people do. We do genuinely believe in collaboration in building, but sometimes there are some really, really bad design traits across the building sector. And we just like to offer a second opinion as far as sustainability goes. There's some really simple tricks of the trade Designers sometimes don't think about minimising waste through design upfront. For example, a standard sheet of jib is 2.4 metres. You'd be surprised at how many architects specify a 2.5 high ceiling just because it sounds nice, but the reality is you're almost ordering twice as much jib. So there's some simple things like that that we can offer advice in upfront. And yeah, I suppose the final step before we get sort of started is signing up our supply chain to targets. We're also trialing incentive schemes at the moment where we're responsible for a certain amount of waste with our trade teams and our managers and our design partners and so forth, but a lot of the problem from a waste perspective on site is our subcontractors and supply chains don't really understand what we're trying to achieve. So we don't like to write it in a contract. That's not the Nail of Love way. We rely a lot on relationships and trust, but we're trying to offer incentives where I guess the money that we save by not sending waste to landfill, we give that back to either the community or to our subcontractors or to our staff to reward them. And then we get into the construction stage. There's a lot of paperwork involved in construction at the moment. And the extra bit of paperwork that we're asking our site teams to start doing is a site waste management plan. So the idea with the site waste management plan is we own the waste that we create. We pre-plan and we come up with a solution whereby we're trying our hardest not to send it to landfill. We're trying our hardest not to recycle it, but sometimes, unfortunately, that is the reality. So a site waste management plan is something that will be government mandated within the next 2 years. So any of the builders in the room or anybody knows anybody that's building a house, every residential and commercial project will have to be held to account by QLDC for the waste that they generate. And a site waste management plan is the tool that people will need to put together to try and minimise that. We highly encourage lack of over-ordering in this industry as well. Again, a lot of our specifications are driven by, I guess, architects and engineers and so forth. We live in a tiny portion of the world, which unfortunately means that we have to order product from overseas. The further away it is, the higher the risk, the more likely we are going to be to over-order to account for that, I guess, error. And that might be workmanship error, it might be a shipping error, it might be a damage error. So I suppose what we're trying to combat is over-ordering from, overseas to ensure we shop local, which solves a lot of problems, actually. And yeah, what we're doing on site is we are a big company. We turn over a significant amount of cash, but what we do in terms of minimising waste really isn't that flash. It's just about shifting the mindset and trying to get people to talk about it. A lot of the industries that you guys work in are probably, it's very prominent to talk about waste in terms of food, but construction, believe it or not, it's living in the dark ages at the moment. So we're just trying to keep it real simple and just eliminate the barriers on site. And from a recycling perspective, this is pretty much all we need to do to encourage people on most of our sites across the country. We record our weights of recycling that's diverted from landfill with local partners such as All Waste and Waste Management. So we can track how much of that 32% locally is or isn't going to landfill. And also, yeah, with anything, money matters. Construction is probably one of the worst culprits for it. Everybody wants to make a quick buck and developers are very reluctant to spend money on sustainability. But what we are saying to people is that designing out waste is basically no cost. Recycling is a small cost and landfill is even more significant. Recycling bins cost approximately 1/3 to 2/3 of the cost of a landfill bin. So it's definitely in everyone's interest to do it. It costs next to no extra time and saves you money on site as well. So yeah, that's more or less it from me at Nail of Love. Yeah, over to the next person.
Thank you. So, yes, the world of composting. I thought I'd take you on a bit of a journey, one would say. This is my alter ego, Mr. Chippy. It's a little truck that I bought that comes from Japan. But it started a bit of a journey. It comes from Osaka, and I decided that it was going to be my way of getting around the town and chasing where the food waste is to compost. It started actually with Kiwi Harvest. I followed them literally right behind the truck and would catch what was needed to be caught. That's expanded onto things like me looking into food waste from hotels and other important areas. And it's been really interesting. This is quite a new concept for me, and with the hotels becoming a lot more busy with tourism. And it's looking like there's several hundred kilograms per hotel per week. And what I had found out is with that weight is how do you lift it? So I had to come up with a way of lifting, and this is the Skippy Tippy 2000. It's operating by boat winch, and because there was no cost-effective way of doing small-scale lifting of bins. Looking into things like how do we engage, this was actually ambassador bins at my front gate. I found that having these bins around the community actually were a very effective way just to get food waste with no contamination, because generally people don't take waste like nappies all the way to somewhere to drop it in a food waste bin. So that was very successful. Started looking at how do you engage with other systems. This is Team Compost, or more Pigpost. I wanted to see how they engaged with the food waste, what they ate, what they left behind. They were doing all the stirring for me and so forth, so that was quite an effective test. And this one here is Chickpost, and this was here is playing with just the idea there's a lot of nutrient density left in this food waste, and can that become another resource that could be managed or turned into especially with the buffet waste, a lot of proteins, could that be consumed to generate eggs, for example? Looking at ways of composting, right at the beginning, a friend had a broken down truck, and an old dump truck, and so I thought about turning that into a giant earthworm, and actually worked really well. So basically the food went into the front and compost came out the bum. So that was just an interesting way of looking at existing infrastructure. But I have settled on skip posting, because this is a uniform type of machinery and tools that exist everywhere. I basically put the mix into the skips, and then it can be delivered. I'm saving handling steps, so that's a really important change. As you do, you start looking at what are the waste streams. I've trialled jib, said I'd take some cherries, 50 tonnes turned up, and found out I could probably make really good wasp catchers, giant tote-sized wasp catchers. So yeah, that was really interesting, just seeing what can you do. I found from the cafe scene, actually coffee grounds was about 80% by weight of the waste, and it's already separate, so why don't I focus on just coffee grounds in Queenstown? What do you do with it once you've got a whole lot of coffee grounds caught up with remarkable fungi and playing with it being a substrate to grow mushrooms, and then you sell that back to the cafes? So also looking at commercialisation processes. What do you do with the mycelium blocks after they've had their flushes? Playing here with putting in some native herbs and so forth, and when you water the herbs you get your own free little mushroom clusters turning up, so you can have a whole meal sitting in your home. That made me think about the world of containers for native plants, and so playing here with the mycelium planter, again looking after natives. They were just actually taken out of my forest in Riverton. Just watering the plants, I was given $15 per block of mushrooms, so I was getting paid to look after things. Looking at the coffee grounds, I was like, well, look at these seed pucks, and or the coffee pucks, and thought, well, could they be a seed puck? Works out I'm getting 20,000 pucks a week from the coffee grounds. Could that be turned into a thing that is purchased by tourists to throw out into our native forests with all the pioneer species as they go around the bikes? I was dumpster diving at the coffee at the airport and found all the cups, and I threw one of the pucks in with herbs made a little mini terrarium, that sat in my car for 3 months without being watered. The fact that we've got millions of cups going into landfill, can they be used? Driving through Arrowtown, saw the leaves being picked up, all going to landfill, said go to my place instead. Last year I probably diverted about 4,000 rubbish bins worth of leaf litter, probably about $50,000 worth of landfill costs, and that generated a really nice compost. Over the winter I decided to say, can I use that energy? So at -8 in that picture, had 31-degree soil temperature, but I was actually getting frost drops dripping onto the leaves of the basil that burnt the basil, but otherwise it would have actually survived. So just really interesting looking at the way you can use microbial energy. And then at the end of the process, with Kiwi Harvest having these changes in their funding, was able to look at models like using Give a Little, which was really powerful. People wanted to buy the compost, let them pay what they wanted to the Give a Little page, and that just discusses this whole concept that we're needing all the time about how we pay for things. Got obsessed with pallets, made a multi-leveled terrarium there using pallet wrap, so just simple tools, cooler climate plants at the bottom, warmer climate at the top, and then again the water was coming through the top from rain and then also recycling. This was called La Fence Revolution, saying what can you do with just within a metre of any rabbit-proof fence, because one of the issues we have too many rabbits where I live. And so I chucked a whole lot of pallets with the compost and then a bit of fabric, and then generated huge amounts of food just within the edge of a fence line. And then this is kind of a full loop. This is where I got that pallet, and it was full of natives, and let nature do its thing. And that's showing manuka that over 12 years has grown. It's released lancewood, and anyway, within 1 square metre, there was actually 40 trees growing in that one area. So yeah, so that's the world of bouncing around compost. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. We're going to have time for some Q&A, so Anna, the lovely Anna's going to bring some chairs up and maybe the couch, and we'll bring our speakers up. Up on the screen is the website address for menti.com, so if you've got a phone and you want to ask a question, just tap into menti.com and enter the code up there. If anyone can't see it, let me know and I can read it out. I'm going to do the same thing. So come on up, fabulous speakers. Anna, can you just show me how this... I've already got a question. Or maybe I'll come and sit next to you, Selene. Alrighty. Ooh, I don't know who this is for. Maybe I'll ask everyone. What has inspired each of you to go on the journey to zero waste?
For me, it's problem solving. I enjoy seeing a challenge and trying to fix it. So it started with wilding pines for me, and then has just kind of bounced on from there. Everything's a ongoing, iterative step.
Are they on?
Thanks. Thank you. I think for me, there's a huge gap in this industry, in this region, for construction, sustainability in construction. So I don't claim to be an innovator, but no one's doing it because it's really hard.
just need somebody to shout about it, really. So that's me.
For me, yeah, I'd say personally, I didn't kind of get into the not-for-profits until about a year ago, so I'd say it's never too late to start. And yeah, for me, it was my own personal well-being in terms of trying to translate what you do personally into work and make a local ripple effect. It's good for your sanity watching all the news, but knowing that you can do something small. So yeah, I think it's just making a local impact and then it'll go from there.
Yeah, for me it was kind of when I was flipping everything on its head based on my career and convincing people to buy more, and then I was kind of unpicking that and flipping it into reverse, and that very much involved simplifying the amount of products I was buying, because I'd spent 15 years convincing people that they needed to buy more. And so then I sort of flipped it into reverse, and one of the things that came out of that was obviously I was buying a lot less and my waste just started going down, and that felt really good. And I think reducing our waste is a really tangible action that we can take, that we get an instant feedback loop on. And it's often, I notice it's often a place that people start with that waste reduction, and then once you start, then you start realising that everything's connected and you start moving into lots of other places of sustainability as well.
For me, it was, I took a job at Wasties because I've had a lot of jobs in very wasteful industries, mainly in events, and I felt like I wanted to do something that filled my cup. And working for Wasties, definitely in the events team and in the reduce team, definitely does that. Like we did an event for regenerative tourism on Tuesday, and I just left, and I think I told Sophie, and I was like, my cup is always so full when I leave Wasties or any, sustainability-related event. Yeah.
It's coming thick and fast. Question for Michael. What more help do you need?
What help for me?
Yeah, what help do you need?
I put a lot of effort into getting systems set up, and then I like to look at the economics of a lot of these processes as well. And I think, yeah, I'm always looking to set up things so people can carry it on and so forth. So yeah, I'm always happy to chat with people whenever they want to have a talk about any of these concepts.
Kirsty, we missed you on that last question.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, why are you into zero waste? I have thought about it quite a bit. And I think for me, it just comes very naturally. I think in terms of the way that I've been brought up, my dad is here tonight in the audience, and he's always inspired me to, he's been an amazing sort of role model in terms of minimising waste, and we're both complete compost freaks, so we speak your language, Michael. And I think, I often can't understand why other people don't want to do it. I've thought about this a lot. Why am I really into minimising waste? And I think it is just having had it modelled, and so I want to do it because I want to model it to my children as well. And it just feels like the right thing to do. I don't know, that's sort of, I get a lot of, it's a deep sort of value, I suppose, that I hold as minimising waste and repurposing things. I get a lot of joy from it, and it just feels like, something that I hope we can spread the, make other people think about it and do it as well. So, yeah, it's a funny one. I don't really know the answer to it, but it just sort of happens. I don't know. Find myself at Fabricate.
It does happen. I tapped into a really early memory a while ago of when I was a kid, and this skip appeared in the street, and like everyone put their stuff in it. And honestly, I think this is one of my happiest childhood memories, is that we all got in the skip. And we just like pulled all this stuff out, and that was like us for the next year. It was amazing. All right. Here's a tough one. I don't know, Gary, I'm going to direct this one at you. Not because it's tough, but just some of the stuff that you talked about in relation to food waste. There's some really big issues there. How do you navigate eco-fatigue? Sometimes it feels like at a community level we're doing so much nationally and internationally, so much, nationally and internationally, it's not there yet. Does that make sense?
I kind of like to my last question, I stopped thinking nationally and internationally. I don't know what that saying is, do what you can do and have the power to know what you can't do. And that, I think, once you start a good ripple effect locally, it's quite quick how it takes off. And just in the last year, just seeing the ripple effects is quite impressive. So I'd say don't worry about nationally and internationally. If Queenstown and Wanaka was to create a very successful example, as we're trying to do with the Zero Waste 30 and everything else, that will be the ripple effect that will be taken once people see it in action, see it working. So I think us just being bold here locally will translate.
Okay, this is probably a good one for everyone, but anyone that wants to tackle this one. How do we get to a post-consumer driven society, community? Anyone?
I think going back to that intergenerational thing, I grew up a lot with my grandmother who was in the, I guess, war and main recessions of the 20s and whatever else. And there's that joy and high levels of utilisation and not needing much. And it's a challenge, isn't it? And you kind of want to just, so you get joy out of that kind of frivolous lifestyle. But yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah, and I think to build on that, I think there's a sense of reigniting our resourcefulness as well, and there's amazing power in that. And I saw that happen quite a bit through COVID lockdowns when people didn't have access to all of the consumer things and were a lot more homebound and had to make do. And a lot of conversations I had where people were actually finding joy in that. And part of it, I think, is also, I think inherently people want to do that, and people do want to break up with that constant quest for more and break out of that cycle of consumption. But sort of building on your beautifully articulate answer to the last question, it's like you have to show them what that can look like. And I know through the work all of you guys are doing, with Fabricate, with Repair, with all those things, when people, it's almost a little bit of build it and they will come, because people want to do it. You just have to have amazing communities like you guys are, creating it, making it easy, making it accessible, and I believe that people inherently want to do it. We just need to start moving the system and the communities towards having it.
We get this a lot. When can Wastebusters expand to other centres? When there's land, when there's enough, I guess, desire within the community to be Wastebusters, it has to be really authentic to the community. It can't come from the outside, it has to come from within. And I think that is the success of Wanaka Wastebusters, is because it was started by the community, for the community, is owned by the community, and is a incorporated society that owns a company, and the society is made up of the members. So I think, we need land, and you need it to be really authentic to that community. So when the desire comes from there, then it really works. Okay. Just quick, how much time do we have? Anyone? Hours. Whew. Okay. Thank you. Oh, hold on, sorry. Okay. Here's one. This one for Naylor Love. How do you deal with the resistance from within Naylor Love and the wider industry, referring to the outdated, wasteful culture of the industry?
It's really hard. No, we're very fortunate that we retain our staff for a long amount of time, and we're constantly updating our practices and learning and evolving and all that kind of stuff. But it genuinely just takes one or two people on a site, and if you can get the right people in those positions of power, your project managers or your site managers or your foreman. All it takes is, 2 or 3 people on a project to change that attitude and that behaviour. And some of our bigger projects, there's 100 people on a project in all different walks of life. So you just have those 1 or 2 or 3 people on a project and point the finger and hold people to account and, follow the processes, do the audits, have the meetings, do the general chit-chat. But yeah, positions of power and having a really positive attitude on a project is super important. We have sustainability champions on every site, which is really cool. And that person is let's call it like the unbiased person, that doesn't have the political agenda. They're just going around just making sure everybody's singing off the same hymn sheet, which is kind of cool.
I had a question just from earlier, just listening to you talk about pushing it, up the chain. What do you think it is that's stopping that collaboration across that building chain from design through to the jobs that you guys do?
It's a huge disjointment. Everyone talks about true genuine collaboration in the building industry. The sad thing is everybody's got a different agenda. Clients generally in this region want to maximise their revenue and their return. They want to, build the cheapest hotel for the biggest, longest term gain. Architects want to deliver something that looks awesome, but they're given a really small brief. Engineers, again, they don't have the money to spend on the design that they think should be enabled, and contractors, unfortunately, are just at the end of the I guess, the hierarchy. And we have the least influence, yet we're responsible for the most waste. So what we try and do as a business, and it's kind of fallen flat in the last couple of years since COVID, we try and get involved as early as possible. And that's what we always say to our clients. And councils are really good at it. They understand the true benefits of collaboration. And for contractors, we like to get involved at concept design. So before a resource consent application goes in, before we get building consents, before we put pen to paper and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on design, you do truly have to bring everyone to the table. And everyone's got their own agenda. And a good project manager will be able to sniff out, what are the important factors. If you don't have that, then, everybody's just screaming from their own sort of perspective. So, yeah, you need a conductor in a build project, and you all need to be brought to the table at the earliest time, and clients generally don't want to pay for it because they can't see the results. They're kind of clouded by spending money up front. They just want to make a quick buck and save the money at the end. So, yeah, it's up to us to try and change that mindset, which is what we're trying to chip away at.
This is one for everyone, I think. Do you think the current trend, or do you think the trend towards decluttering is a good thing or not?
I think it's a tricky one because at Wasties, we would see kind of the end of that decluttering process. People would have, like Labor Day weekend is a perfect weekend because people have a big spring clean and they come to Wasties. And this weekend we had to put a stop on donations because all the crates were full and Wasties was full. So we couldn't accept anything until we sold or made some room. So people declutter, it comes to us, we sell it on. But then I feel like people declutter, but then they will buy again, or they'll come to Wasties and they'll clutter again, or there's then chains, big warehouse chains who sell cheaper items where then people will go and then they will buy. Why wouldn't I change my kettle for $5? So I think decluttering is good, but I think it's the whole behavioral change behind it that we need to get this behavioral change going so that people just get used to living with less instead of, I, for example, have 15 jackets and they're all from Wasties. I don't need 15 jackets. you know, yeah.
Yeah, I think about this a lot too. And I think, you know, we can control what we purchase, but the thing that is really hard is when people give you things. You know, I think we need to change the culture of gift giving as well. In our family, we do a secret Santa, so we only get one Christmas present amongst all the adults, and the kids only get one Christmas present. I think trying to change some of the behaviour a little bit further down, you know, and encourage people to give gifts that are homemade food or experiences and things like that. I feel very overwhelmed by things coming into my home that I don't have control over. So I think, you know, just starting a culture, and it is, I think people sometimes think, what's the difference if I just do that one thing? But I do believe that every little thing that each individual does just spreads that wave of, oh, I could give, you know, some baking for a gift instead of a plastic toy, whatever it is, you know. So yeah, I think we have to change not only, you know, the decluttering, but where is this stuff coming from? How is it getting into our homes in the first place?
Yeah, I think as well, I think the people are keen, but they need help in picking the right decision. I think they're so hard out there now, and there's real opportunity to, you know, have some tools to help people in terms of how long it's going to last, the return on investment, you know, translating the costs into, I think there's a huge opportunity there for people to make it easier so people can make that transition.
Yeah, I think, and everybody said it really well so far, decluttering, it depends where it starts and where it finishes, because often, you're right, it becomes a cycle. People declutter and they feel really good about it, but then slowly there's creep of more stuff back into your life, because the reality is there's a multi-trillion-dollar marketing industry convincing us that we need to buy more stuff and that we need to update our throw pillows and our, you know, all our home decor and things like that. So I think it's that's what we're up against. It becomes part of a cycle as opposed to the end of a cycle, unfortunately, with decluttering, and that's the big risk with it. But something draws people to it, and I think what draws people to it is that it does simplify your life. There's this concept of the paradox of choice, whereas humans, we feel like we want more choice and we want more things and we want to fill our house with all the things, but then what comes with that is complexity. And there's a quote that I love, which is, with every possession comes responsibility, and the more stuff we have, the more things we have to look after and maintain and tidy up and move and all of those sorts of things. So that's kind of the seesaw that people are playing, is I feel overwhelmed by this, so I'm going to declutter and this feels really good, but oh, look, there's more shiny stuff and I'm going to buy it. So it becomes this cycle. So how do we see decluttering as the end of the line instead of obviously part of a cycle?
One thing, kind of coming from an industrial design background as well, is I've always thought about the concept of timelessness. You know, it's the ability to come up with design and concepts and products that have very, very long lifespans, and that idea that we try and transition back to say it's the classics, a knife, you know, a knife that will last 80 years, and so that's a quality item, or a pot or pan that just keeps going and going. So I think, that naturally, because it costs so much more, you have less, but also when it is transitioned to another person, it's a quality asset. Mm.
And I talk a lot about how do we fall in love with the things that we already have, because I think that's what we've been conditioned to do, is to fall in love with all of the other things. But actually, if we're buying things, and I talk a lot about, you know, I have a lot of the furniture I buy is secondhand, and the couch that I have is secondhand, and I love the fact that you can buy it and know that it's quality. And when I bought it, I went, this is my couch for life, and if it needs to be recovered, cool. If it needs to be repaired, cool. But it's just that mindset of kind of going, how do I fall in love with what I have? And a big part of that for me has been breaking up with temptation, the sources of temptation. So I unsubscribe from marketing emails that are trying to tell me that I need a new couch, or I unfollow social media accounts that are trying to tell me that I need new cushions, and I don't go to the mall because, like I said, there's a $1 trillion marketing industry that is very good at convincing, you know, I'm not a robot, I get swayed as well. So breaking up with that source of temptation can be a really powerful way to help fall in love with the things that we have and make them more timeless and investments.
Yeah, and I really loved the story earlier with Recreate, with, that they'll take their garments back to repair them. And I know at Wasties we've been running repair events for a long time, and for me, there's just nothing better than seeing the joy in someone's when they learn how to repair something themselves. And it's just like this really deep satisfaction with, I can wear these jeans, for another year. So I love that. There's a question here which I can't answer, but I feel like there's maybe a slightly different one, and it's our green waste bins coming to the Queenstown Lakes District Council. I don't know the answer to that, and I think Gary's saying no, but I feel like there's some other really innovative things that are happening in our district.
There is talk of in Central Lakes, or in Central Otago, that there'll be a green waste facility, but it's a long way down the line. So I think Michael and the Queenstown, I know, are just proactively, it's like businesses taking it on themselves because it's not a good idea to wait around for the council.
Yeah, I like to dabble. I've been letting commercial businesses bring green waste to me so I can play with it and understand the dynamics, i.e. the flex dynamic, and things that don't want to deteriorate quickly. But yeah, it is easier than you think to get on top of this stuff. It always needs a tractor, but outside of that, a lot of it's movement. It's always about movement, logistics of movement, and so I'm trying to understand natural rhythms of people's movements and ways that we could just make it easier for things to go to the right place. And and I find I'll probably keep playing with the world of Arrowtown because it's quite a nice little zone that I can trial things. And for example, the other day I dropped off a load of compost to a home. They happened to have a wolf edge full of green waste there. And I was like, I can take that. And so suddenly I'm closing my own little cyclic loop of a vehicle movement. And so it's always just playing and trying, and I think we could actually have a significant change quite easily in that space. But I've got a few things I'm dabbling with. Follow Mr. Chippy Chippy, you might see it. Yeah. Yeah,
and there are a few other examples of, John McRae out at Glendale Station's got a massive worm farm. He's taking all of the food waste from Treble Cone, which is not insignificant. Cadrona, he's also taking a lot of the food. He took a ton of food waste from Glendale Bay Motor Camp over the summer, and Cadrona are dealing with all their own food waste on site, and they're using that to create compost for their regeneration efforts. So it's a really nice kind of closed loop system that's happening. Right, I think I've just got one question, maybe two. Oh, here's one. For Gary. How are you working towards rescuing food waste as opposed to moving it around? I'm not sure I understand that question.
So, it's been utilised for what it is. That's.
Reducing food waste as opposed to moving it around.
I definitely understand that we are at the kind of other end of the chain in terms of we're diverting from landfill. But yeah, we've got a grant from the Waste Minimisation Fund, and we're actually working with some local chefs for a project next year in terms of teaching people and some of the topics I brought up in my talk there in terms of personal things people can do. A lot of it is generational, when you talk things like pickling and dehydrating, and it's completely alien. Everyone thinks the food just comes from the supermarket and then it goes to the bin. That's the way it's been brought. So I think, just playing our part in terms of bringing that all the techniques that are already in existence and hacks and recipes and stuff back into people's mindset. That will do a bit, but yeah, it's a big project.
I might be able to add one other little point of interest. And that is, I found with what I've been doing, say, with following for the supermarkets or even the hotels, is once a lot of it's they're not aware of how much there is because it's going into a mixed waste bin, for example. And so once it's separated, you start to see a conscious understanding of the volumes involved, and then they can start to see if they can have an impact on that, and that's kind of where I'm at in that reduction space.
We send reports to all our donors, so all the supermarkets will get reports and breakdowns of their waste, so they're able to track it, and we see their own systems that have, like, there is great reductions. So yeah, we just give them the data so they're able to make better decisions, which a lot of them are doing, which is great.
Here's one that I might have a few tips on. How do we influence big businesses in the food supply chain to reduce packaging and accept as normal the concept of BYO containers? I mean, I guess in my experience, what I've noticed is that businesses, big and small, are extremely responsive to what their customers want. So asking for the thing that you want politely, nicely, and questioning why it can't happen. The more people that do that, they will listen. There's definitely New World in the North Island accept BYO containers for deli items, and I think meat as well. But also, we don't necessarily need to shop at the supermarket. There's plenty of refill options in some of the local shops. But yeah, I would say ask for it and just keep asking. We've been doing a lot of work at Wastebusters by working with businesses to promote those businesses that will allow you to do that. And so I think the more that we kind of profile and support businesses that do allow that and encourage that, and kind of shine a light on them and support them, the more that some of the bigger businesses will get on board.
And I'd just like to underline your first point, Sophie, because working for big businesses for a number of years, they would always desperate to find out what their customers wanted. They'd spend a fortune on customer research and focus groups and trying to understand, often as customers, we feel like the businesses are making decisions for us and we don't have any say in it. But the flip side of that is working on the inside, they were always desperate to find out what we wanted as customers. So I think don't underestimate that. And you might feel that you might go in and say something and maybe it doesn't get heard or maybe it doesn't register. But then if 3 or 4 other people go in and have the same conversation, any business, will kind of start going, okay, this is what our customers need, and any business that's going to stay in existence will respond to customer demands.
Alright,
I just intended to talk with the bowling club from Dunedin there last week, and they've called their business after bringing a bowl, the bowling club in Dunedin, and they're doing $4 meals, and people, 700 to 1,000 people a night, three nights a week in Dunedin turn up to eat there for the costs, but they all bring their bowls and they all understand it. It's, so they've built a culture around it. So that just proves, people buy in.
One other thing, really important to understand the difference between reusable assets and single-use compostable assets. Like, basically, they're not compostable. So don't get those two mixed up. It's really important that this, assets that are reused all the time will have secondary use and not compostable, because it's not actually an asset to the compost whatsoever to have single-use items put in there. I can tell you on a windy day it really sucks. All this papery stuff flies everywhere.
Yeah, and I think even when some of these larger industrial composting solutions are going to be rolled out across the country, they're not going to be accepting compostable single-use takeaway packaging or any compostable packaging.
Sorry, just to plug the construction industry a little bit, not directly related to food, but there are a number of products in the construction industry as well. You'd be surprised at how many companies take back and repurpose offcuts of materials. A lot of insulation providers, if anyone's building a house, they'll accept their plastic packaging. They'll take it back for free. Jib, for example, can be repurposed into compost. In Christchurch, it's not ideal to have offcuts, but you'd be surprised at how many companies will take back things and repurpose them in the industry. It's just about spreading the word, and the more you complain about it, the more they listen. Mitre 10's got a really great sustainability manager now. She's awesome, and she's actively working through their supply chain to try and get everyone that supplies to Mitre 10 to take back any single-use items, which is really cool.
Alrighty, I think we've got time for one last question. Kirsty, the fabric shredder is awesome. That's not the question. What about washable dog beds?
Oh, this is good. We need ideas, definitely. So, yeah, I mean, anything that's usually stuffed with, any fabric or even, the dreaded bean bag with those awful polystyrene beans, maybe we could trial putting fabric, shredded fabric. I also thought about maybe, when you get things in the mail, like even we get avocados, which are in wood wool, which is, maybe we could use shredded fabric to package as a packaging thing. So, yeah, send any ideas you have to fabricate and we can keep that machine going and shred thousands of tons of fabric. So, yeah.
Nice one. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up there, unless anyone's got anything burning they want to say. Thanks everyone for coming along tonight, and thank you to all of our awesome speakers for giving up your time to be here. And thanks to WOW for having us. And coming up, I'm just trying to think, Future Festival Saturday and Sustainable Bike Tour is on. I'm looking for a WOW person. Saturday morning. I assume there's still spots on that?
We'll expand it as necessary.
Great. All right. All right. Thanks, everyone.